All right, time for the Fine Five and the Ugly Five here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. These are the 5 best and 5 worst teams in the NFL. This is hard. There's a lot of 5-0 teams here. As you know, 5 perfect teams in the NFL. But are they my Fine Five? We'll tell you that in just a few. Want to remind you tomorrow morning, listen during Mike and Mike for the Flyers Ticket Thursday Game of the Week. Tell us what it is, and you'll win Flyers tickets every Thursday in the month of October here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's football station. And the Fine Five has been a very evolving thing with all these teams undefeated, but the Ugly Five is getting harder and harder, Pete. Let's take a look at this week's Fine Five first, because I think this one, there's a lot of undefeated teams here. Number 5 on my Fine Five list, I'm going Carolina Panthers. They're 4-0, haven't moved off them. They've been in there. I don't know that there's too many other people that are going Carolina in the top 5.
Yeah, I mean, Cam Newton's, he's struggling a little bit. I mean, I think a lot of, that defense obviously is one of the main reasons why they're 4-0 at this point. They did have that bye, so maybe that will help them.
You're not buying them?
Well, it depends who you have in front of them. Because I know there's one NFC team that you're not so fond of.
No, they're not in my Fine Five because number 4 has a loss, and that's Arizona.
There you go.
They're 100 points better. They're winning 190-90 this year. So I got Arizona with 1 loss in over Denver and Atlanta with undefeated records. I got them both out. I'm going Arizona, even though they lost that game to the Rams. I thought they rebounded nicely. And they're not just winning games, they're blowing teams out.
Yeah, and they just got back Andre Ellington. So now they have a backfield of Chris Johnson, Andre Ellington, and another Johnson in there as well. And Carson Palmer's really, he's a guy who tore his ACL last season. He's really rebounded much better than Sam Bradford has. Talk about the rust factor. There is none with Carson Palmer right now.
Yeah, he's playing really good football. I think he's won 17 out of his last 20 games. I'll take him in the number 4 spot with his Cardinals. In the number 3 hole, Bengals showed me a little fortitude the other day, coming back from 17 down. I've had them at 3 the whole season. They're 5-0. I'll stick with the Bungles, who are now grown into the Bengals.
Yeah, Dalton and A.J. Green right now, that connection, as well as that defense that we saw really holding Seattle. They haven't, they didn't score too many points after that big-time lead they had. So, good fortitude win by Cincinnati at home.
Showing me something.
Yeah.
Showing me something. All right, number 2, it's the Packers. That hasn't changed, although the last 2 weeks they have been not explosive on offense, but Aaron Rodgers still playing at a pretty high level, even though he threw 2 picks last week. I'll go Packers 2, Patriots 1 in the Fine Five. Not a lot of argument there.
No, absolutely not.
All right, these are the Ugly Fives. These are tough to do, man. There's a lot of ugly teams. I mean, we could certainly put a steel cage match. Should we get a steel cage set up for these guys?
Well, I think Atlanta would like to fight Carolina, maybe. Or,
they're going to get a chance to fight each other twice.
That's true.
Down the road, those 2 teams play twice.
They're in action tomorrow night against New Orleans.
Atlanta is, but Atlanta plays Carolina in like a 2-week span, a 3-week span. They play twice late in the year. So that's going to be really all you need to know. That's going to be for all so those 2 teams are going to be going back and forth all season long. All right, these are my Ugly Fives here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Look, there's a lot of teams that are 1-4. There's an 0-for team. These are all really bad football teams, so it really is fluid. But here we go. Number 5 in my Ugly Five. First time they're in is the Houston Texans. Their quarterback situation's a disaster. They've given up 135 points. Where's J.J. Watt?
Yeah, he's really nowhere to be found. I mean, you talked about game planning for defensive players yesterday. I think J.J. Watt is one of those guys, but that's not helping him in the win column whatsoever.
No, it's not.
And that's not helping their quarterback situation either.
The quarterback situation down there has been an absolute disaster. I think Mallett's a lousy teammate. They got Hoyer playing quarterback. They're number 5 in my Ugly Five right now. Number 4, no wins. The Detroit Lions, 0-5. And you might wonder, well, why are they number 5? Number 4, why aren't they the worst team? I think at 0-5 they played a pretty tough schedule, but they're starting to show signs that they're not a very good football team. Look, I know at 0-4 you say, well, they're not a good football team then. They lose to the Packers. They've lost some really good teams this year. But now they're starting to show, I think, some signs that they're just going to be in this tailspin of a season. I think you're looking at a Lions team that is going snowballing down the hill.
And this was a team that was in the playoffs last year. They almost beat Dallas. They probably should have beaten Dallas with the officiating there, but now they've lost 5 in a row, 0-5. I mean, they go from the playoffs with Calvin Johnson and Stafford to now 0-5.
It snowballs really fast. And that's what happened with the Eagles a couple of years ago. When you have expectations that are pretty high, and then all of a sudden you come out of the gate like this, I think guys shut it down. Like they say, man, we're supposed to be better than this, and they lose confidence, and then it gets ugly and out of control. All right, number 3. Last week they had a battle. I think the loser of this game ends up in this spot. The winner is out of the ugly 5, and Tampa beat Jacksonville. So Jacksonville stays in the ugly 5, and Tampa at 2-3 gets out. But Jacksonville right now, 1-4. They're getting outscored by 52. They've given up 145 points. I thought the Gus Bus was supposed to be a defensive-minded guy.
Yeah, I mean, you could...
Gave up 38 to Jameis Winston the other day.
Yeah, I mean, they are a staple of the ugly 5. I mean, you could literally do this segment 10 years from now, and you probably would. Maybe you'd have the London Jaguars in there.
Oh,
but
low blow.
Same personnel.
Hey, we started the ugly 5 and the fine 5 about 3 years ago. I got to check how many weeks that Jacksonville has been in there. Because you're right. I think they've been in just about every single week. All right, number 2 in the ugly 5. They played hard the other night. I mean, I was cheering for them. But the Fighting Tomasulos come up short.
Oh,
Jacksonville, number 3. San Francisco, number 2. They've given up 140 points this year. Their problem is, offensively, they're wretched. They've only scored 75 points. Jacksonville has outscored San Francisco by 20 points this year.
Yeah, I think San Francisco blew their you-know-what, the opener, the Monday night opener against Minnesota. They haven't won a game since.
You know Fletcher Cox won the NFC Defensive Player of the Week?
I do know that. I did hear that, yeah.
I figured that was
okay, yes.
Very apropos time to tell you that.
I get it.
All right, on number 1 on the ugly 5 list, they didn't play last week, but I can't move them out. They fired their coach a couple of weeks ago, and even though they didn't play last week, they still given up over 100 points on defense this year. The Miami Dolphins, now they got a shot because they fired their coach to right the ship here a little bit, but when you don't play and you're number 1 in the fine 5 1 week ago, I can't get you out of that spot. So the Miami Dolphins are number 1 in this week's ugly 5. You got a problem with that?
No, I mean, pro football in Florida right now is just awful.
You've got Miami, Jacksonville, and Tampa.
How many wins
and
you got
Tampa's
there?
the best team of them all right now.
You have 1 win in between. You got 3 wins.
You got 2 from Tampa, 1 from Jacksonville, so 4.
4
1
wins
from
from
Miami.
3 teams.
That is your fine 5 and your ugly 5 here on the Sports Bash. You know, there's other teams that are considered in the uglies. You can take a look at the Kansas City Chiefs. They lose Jamal Charles. They've been a big-time disappointment. They got up 143 points. You know, they were a very good defensive team the last couple of years. You know who was not in the uglies?
When they haven't won a game since Jamal Charles fumbled that ball against the Broncos.
That's right. Another team that could have been in the uglies, Tennessee, is still struggling along. They've lost 3 in a row. Keep our eye out on them. But, you know, we'll give a heads up, give a clap there for Oakland. I don't know. Can the Oakland Raiders continue, even though they've lost 2 in a row, they're at least respectable. Can they stay out of the uglies for the rest of the year? Find out next week in the Fine 5 and the Ugly 5 every week at this time on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. It is our Fine 5 and Ugly 5.